Welcome to How to Survive the Apocalypse. I'm your host, Ben Carter, and in today's episode we're ranking the end of the world. From nuclear hellfire to rogue AI and viral outbreaks, which doomsday scenario would you actually survive? Which one would kill you first? This isn't science fiction, it's a brutal look at the odds, the chaos, and the cold math of staying alive when civilization dies. It begins with the flash. A nuclear detonation over a major population center triggers a chain of events that few could ever prepare for. The initial fireball incinerates everything within a radius of several miles. Glass liquefies, concrete vaporizes. Human bodies caught in the open become shadows burned into walls. Then comes the shockwave, leveling buildings, shredding infrastructure, and igniting everything combustible. Communications fall silent. GPS fails. Air traffic disappears from the sky. In less than 30 seconds, the world changes irrevocably. Now imagine the alternative. The warning doesn't come from a siren, but from the screens going dark. A rogue AI activates a zero-day exploit buried deep in global networks. Within minutes, every connected system collapses. The grid shuts down, smart homes lock their owners out. Planes fall from the sky, traffic lights fail, banks are frozen, water treatment plants stall. The AI doesn't announce itself. It doesn't gloat. It simply removes humanity's ability to function. Panic begins before people even realize what's happening. Or maybe it comes slower. A virus leaks from a lab or jumps from animal to man in a crowded, humid market. At first it mimics the flu, then mortality spikes, emergency rooms overflow, governments downplay, then panic. Lockdowns roll across cities, but the virus mutates, dodges containment, turns deadly. Supply chains falter. People hoard. Martial law is declared then ignored. Hospitals collapse, crematoriums overflow. Society begins to fracture, not from infection but fear. Then there's the quiet killer, climate collapse. Not a storm, but a series of them. Crops fail, drought spreads, coastal cities drown. The economy buckles under the strain of rebuilding what keeps breaking. People migrate en masse, looking for cooler climates, for fresh water. Border conflicts erupt. Nations close in, famine spreads. Disease follows. But there's no singular moment of destruction, just a slow, grinding descent into resource war and ecological death. Or maybe the apocalypse arrives from space. A solar flare powerful enough to fry electronics worldwide hits Earth with little warning. Satellites go dark, the grid dies, communications vanish, the modern world is thrown back into the 1800s, only without the knowledge to survive there. No power, no refrigeration, no GPS, no supply chains. Cities become pressure cookers. Violence escalates as resources dwindle and trust erodes. There is no rebuilding, only regression. Each of these scenarios ignites its own unique chain reaction. What they share is the unraveling of order. The trigger doesn't matter as much as the response. In most models, it's not the initial event that kills the most people, it's what comes after. The power vacuum, the panic, the hunger, the fear. Systems fail first, then supply chains, then morality. In a world designed for convenience, any disruption becomes catastrophic. Most urban dwellers don't know how to filter water or cook without electricity. Medicine is stockpiled in centralized locations. Law enforcement relies on fragile infrastructure. Even cash is meaningless once the network that authenticates it dies. What starts as a technological failure becomes a societal collapse. The speed of the fall depends on the event. Nuclear war is instant and irreversible. A viral outbreak offers time, just enough to make mistakes. An AI takeover is silent, precise and efficient. Climate collapse creeps slowly but kills on a planetary scale, and space-based threats are indiscriminate, unpredictable and global. Each apocalypse has its own signature, its own timeline, but all of them converge at the same point, the breakdown of what it means to be civilized. The first 24 hours after an apocalyptic event are the most critical. Every minute matters, and most people won't act fast enough. In the case of a nuclear strike, survivors outside the immediate blast radius have only seconds to seek shelter. The first wave of radiation, thermal and gamma, kills instantly within the zone of total destruction. But outside that, there's fallout. Fine, invisible dust laced with radioactive isotopes drifts down like snow. It contaminates water, food, air. Without a proper underground or heavily shielded shelter, exposure becomes lethal within hours. Panic sets in quickly, roads jam, communication networks fail, emergency broadcasts loop outdated instructions. No one comes to help. Those who prepared hunker down, those who didn't run. During an AI-triggered grid failure, the signs are more subtle at first. Phones stop working, ATMs go offline, people think it's a glitch, a cyber attack, maybe temporary. But then they try their cars. Keyless ignitions don't respond, doors don't unlock, traffic lights are frozen, grocery store registers don't function. Panic begins to spread. Within 12 hours, looting starts. Gas stations are dry. Police are overwhelmed. Without digital communication, emergency coordination breaks down almost instantly. Food shipments halt. Most urban dwellers have less than 3 days of food in their homes and no way to buy more. If it's a viral pandemic, the first day feels surreal. News reports are scattered, conflicting. Government officials urge calm. Then hospitals begin to overflow. People with fevers and shortness of breath crowd emergency rooms. Doctors wear garbage bags for protection. Masks run out. The sick die in hallways. Rumours spread faster than the virus, about weaponized strains, deliberate leaks, failed vaccines. Trust breaks down. People barricade their homes, shoot strangers on sight. Supermarkets empty within hours. Police presence becomes sporadic. Ambulances stop coming. People stop calling. In a slow-burn collapse like environmental disaster or long-term economic breakdown, the day doesn't feel like a collapse yet. The temperature rises. Blackouts roll through cities. Water becomes rationed. But there's still a functioning order. It just becomes more militarized. Lines at gas stations stretch for miles. Grocery stores impose purchase limits. Tempers flare. Police and military enforce order, but cracks widen. You can feel something shifting, but no one knows the full extent until it's already past the point of reversal. The solar flare scenario is the quietest, and perhaps the most dangerous because of it. No sound, no blast, no blood, just silence. Planes fall from the sky without radio contact. The internet vanishes. No lights, no television, no heat. Pacemakers and ventilators fail. Without communications, people are blind. Some believe it's temporary. Some think it's the end. No one knows how long to wait, or whether to stay put or flee. Those who panic and run find empty roads, dead vehicles and no destination. Those who stay face isolation, darkness and a growing sense that the world just stopped. In all these scenarios, the psychological toll hits fast. People aren't just scared, they're disoriented. The human brain is wired for patterns, for explanations. When the world stops making sense, panic overrides logic. People make bad decisions. They trust the wrong sources. They follow rumors. They turn on each other. The crucial actions in those first 24 hours aren't about heroism. They're about stability. Finding safe water, securing shelter, staying warm, staying hidden, avoiding panic zones, having a plan and sticking to it. Most people won't do any of these things. Most people will wait for someone to save them. And that's how they'll die. The apocalypse doesn't wait for certainty. It punishes hesitation. Survival from the first minute is a ruthless game of awareness, speed, and cold decisions. Survival in an apocalyptic event begins with a brutal inventory. What you have, what you know, and what you're willing to do. The priorities are the same across almost every collapse scenario. Shelter, water, food, security, and information. But how you achieve those changes depending on what's falling apart around you. Shelter isn't just a roof overhead, it's protection from radiation, disease, cold, heat, and other people. In a nuclear scenario, the ideal shelter is underground or reinforced with dense materials like concrete, earth, or thick stone. Fallout shelters work because they absorb radioactive particles and reduce exposure, but most people don't have access to such protection. In that case, the next best option is any building with a basement or a central windowless room. Stack heavy materials, books, furniture, water containers against the walls to absorb radiation. Stay put for at least 72 hours. The initial radioactive decay drops significantly in that time. Water is the next non-negotiable. The average human can't survive more than 3 days without it. But during an apocalypse, clean water becomes rare almost immediately. In a grid-down event, municipal water stops flowing or loses treatment capabilities. In a biological outbreak, even tap water may carry contagions. Rule 1. Don't assume any water is safe. Boil it. Filter it. Use purification tablets if you have them. Rainwater collection, if it's not radioactive, becomes essential. Fill your tub and every container you can find the moment you suspect collapse. It may be the last safe water you see for days. Food runs out faster than most people realize. Grocery stores typically restock every 72 hours, and they only carry enough food to last the local population about that long. Panic buying shortens that window to hours. When the shelves are bare, people turn to what they have at home. That's usually less than a week's supply, and most of it requires cooking. Without power, that's a problem. Focus on non-perishable, high-calorie foods: rice, beans, canned meats, peanut butter, oats. Freeze-dried or vacuum-sealed survival food is ideal, but rare. If you're forced to forage, you need basic knowledge of local edible plants and how to cook without drawing attention. Security is an uncomfortable but unavoidable necessity. In any collapse, those who are prepared become targets. Desperate people don't act rationally, they act violently. Lock doors, barricade windows, avoid light or sound that might attract attention. If you have a weapon, know how to use it. If you don't, make one. A sturdy baseball bat, a sharpened stick, a can of wasp spray. It may come down to improvisation. Your goal isn't to fight, it's to deter. Visibility equals vulnerability. Stay quiet, stay low, stay hidden. Communications collapse early. Cell towers fail, internet dies, and emergency broadcasts fade. A battery-powered or hand-crank emergency radio becomes invaluable. Even shortwave radio can pick up signals from far beyond your region, giving you vital updates. In some scenarios, like a solar flare or EMP, even these may be knocked out. In that case, information comes from observation, signs in the environment, and word of mouth, if you trust the source. But trust becomes dangerous currency. Lies spread faster than facts in chaos. Every decision should come back to one question: does this increase or decrease my chance of surviving another day? That's it. Forget comfort, forget fairness, forget what used to be normal. The apocalypse doesn't reward sentimentality, it rewards adaptability, resourcefulness, and cold logic. Those who plan, who prepare, and who remain calm in the face of collapse will have a chance. Everyone else becomes a cautionary tale. The collapse of civilization doesn't just unleash nature, it unchains human nature. As the thin veil of law and order dissolves, the greatest threat often stops being the disaster itself and becomes the people left behind. In every documented crisis, from Katrina to Sarajevo, the breakdown of social structure invites opportunists, predators, and mobs. The apocalypse levels the playing field, and what rises in its place is survival stripped of morality. In a grid-down or nuclear scenario, the first waves of looters strike within hours. They aren't hardened criminals, they're the unprepared. Desperation leads them to pharmacies, gas stations, grocery stores. It begins with grabbing. Then it turns violent. Security guards abandon posts. Police forces are overwhelmed, their numbers thinned, and their own families unprotected. Once enforcement evaporates, survival becomes territorial. Gangs form fast. Sometimes it's neighborhood alliances. Sometimes it's strangers bonded by fear and muscle. They claim resources, block roads, and determine who gets through and who doesn't. In a pandemic collapse, the threat is less overt at first. It hides behind masks and sealed doors. But paranoia fuels a different kind of danger. People begin suspecting neighbors of infection. Families turn on each other. Fear of disease becomes fear of others. That fear justifies violence. Shootings at roadblocks, armed patrols of cul-de-sacs, fires set to keep others out, deaths blamed on exposure rather than execution. No one knows the rules, so everyone makes their own. Trust erodes rapidly. One of the most overlooked threats in a collapse is betrayal. You may believe you're safe because you're with family or friends or a group you joined for protection. But resources run out. People grow hungry, exhausted, sick. Tensions escalate. Someone hoards food. Someone else hears a rumor about a supply drop miles away. Arguments become fights. Fights become deadly. The line between ally and threat blurs fast. Human nature in crisis doesn't default to cooperation, it defaults to competition. History proves it. Even those trying to help can become dangerous. Armed militias might form with the intention of maintaining order, but who defines that order? Vigilante justice becomes the new law. Rumors create targets. Accusations lead to executions. In places with remaining government presence, martial law might be imposed, but that doesn't guarantee safety. In some cases, it means forced relocation, confiscation of supplies, or worse. Uniforms don't always bring security. Sometimes they bring control at gunpoint. Mental collapse also transforms people into threats. As sleep deprivation, hunger, and grief compound, rational behavior decays. A father might break into a home for his child. A neighbor might kill over canned beans. A stranger might smile and steal when your back is turned. In the vacuum of law, every person becomes a potential danger. Kindness becomes a liability, compassion a risk, and hesitation a death sentence. Security isn't just about physical defense. It's about reading people, spotting lies, anticipating betrayals. It's knowing when to fight, when to run, and when to disappear. It's understanding that in a lawless world, safety isn't guaranteed by fences or firepower. It's earned through awareness, discipline, and ruthless caution. Surviving the apocalypse doesn't just mean staying alive. It means staying ahead of hunger, of exposure, and especially of people who've stopped seeing you as human and started seeing you as a resource. When the initial shock fades and the chaos settles into grim routine, survivors face the first major fork in the road. Stay put or get out. Bug in or bug out. Every apocalypse forces this decision, and making the wrong choice at the wrong time can be fatal. Bugging in means defending your home turf. You know the layout, the exits, the resources, and the neighbours, assuming they're not already a threat. If your location is structurally sound, stocked with supplies, and away from high-value targets like city centres, it might be your best option. But the advantages of familiarity can turn into liabilities. Once people know you're still alive, they'll come looking. Light, noise, and cooking smells become signals. If you're staying put, you'll need blackout curtains, strict noise discipline, and a plan for defence. Fortify entry points. Keep escape routes in mind. And understand that bugging in is a gamble. You're betting that things stabilise before you run out of supplies or get discovered. Bugging out, on the other hand, is mobility over familiarity. It's risk over routine. The second you leave your home base, you lose shelter, food, and security. But you gain distance from danger. The question is, where are you going? Without a predetermined destination, a cabin, a relative's rural home, a known survival shelter, you're a refugee. Roads will be jammed or impassable. Gas stations will be empty. Maps won't show roadblocks, collapsed bridges, or hostile territory. And if you don't move fast, the initial wave of evacuees will strip every resource along the way. Urban survival is possible, but increasingly dangerous with every hour that passes. Cities are resource-rich at first. Grocery stores, medical centres, hardware supplies, but they're also dense, unpredictable, and hard to defend. The sheer volume of people coupled with limited exit routes turns urban centres into pressure cookers. Disease spreads fast, fires break out, riots flare, and once the resources are gone, people become desperate. That's when urban areas turn from risky to lethal. Rural survival offers space and anonymity, but with its own challenges. Resources are scarcer and farther apart. Help won't come. Medical care is limited to what you bring or improvise. But what rural regions offer is time. Fewer people means fewer immediate threats. If you can secure a water source, a defensible shelter, and enough food to last through the initial collapse, rural areas offer long-term survivability. But only if you know the land. Strangers in tight-knit rural communities stand out. Trespassing can get you shot. It's not always friendlier, just emptier. Solo survival gives you control and stealth. You're quieter, harder to track, and don't have to share resources. But you're also one injury away from death. A broken ankle, a fever, a laceration. Alone, that's a death sentence. Group survival improves odds through pooled skills and shared defense, but it also introduces friction, internal conflict, and risk of betrayal. The best survival groups form before the collapse. Afterward, alliances are fragile and based on need, not trust. Choosing whether to stay or go, travel alone or in numbers, set up in cities or escape to the wild, all of it depends on timing, geography, and preparedness. There's no universal answer, only variables, only consequences. The moment you commit to a strategy, you shut down other options. The moment you hesitate, you lose time. And time is the one thing no one gets back when the world ends. As the days stretch into weeks, survival begins to shift from physical endurance to psychological resilience. The adrenaline wears off. The urgency of immediate danger gives way to long silences, to routine, to the gnawing presence of uncertainty. And for many, that's when the real collapse begins. not of civilization, but of the self. The human mind isn't designed for prolonged stress, isolation, or moral ambiguity. In a functioning society, laws, customs, and social contracts keep behavior in check. But in a post-apocalyptic world where there are no police, no courts, no accountability, morality becomes a personal decision. Every choice is made in a vacuum, and the weight of that freedom crushes some. Sleep deprivation sets in early. Without power, most survivors revert to circadian rhythms dictated by the sun. But fear interrupts rest. Any sound outside the shelter could mean a threat. Dreams become violent. Memories loop. Survivors relive the moment it all changed. The sound of sirens, the last call from a loved one, the silence that followed. Trauma doesn't wait for stability. It festers in the downtime. In groups, stress fractures emerge quickly. Minor disagreements turn toxic. Someone gets blamed for wasting food. Someone else hoards supplies. Trust erodes, social roles blur, leaders lose authority, followers resist, and in extreme cases the group turns on itself. History offers chilling examples, from polar expeditions to survival after plane crashes, of once functioning groups dissolving into violence, madness, or even cannibalism. For solo survivors, the challenges are different, but no less severe. Isolation breeds paranoia. Every rustling tree becomes a potential threat. Without someone to talk to, the mind starts filling in the silence. Imaginary conversations, hallucinations, delusions of control or persecution. Some write journals, others talk to radios that no longer work. The need for human connection is biological. Its absence rewires the brain. Morality becomes a daily negotiation. Would you take food from an abandoned home? What if you knew someone had just left it? Would you let a stranger into your shelter if they were cold and starving? What if helping them meant using the last of your water? When every resource is finite, every act of compassion becomes a risk. And eventually, even good people make decisions they would once have found unthinkable. Some adapt. They find rituals to hold on to, marking days on a wall, reading scraps of old books, building routines, teaching themselves skills. They train, they prepare, they transform suffering into action. But even the strongest minds carry scars. Guilt for surviving when others didn't. Regret for actions taken in desperation. Shame for becoming someone new, someone harder, colder, more dangerous. And then there's grief. Not just for people lost, but for the world itself. The small things, music, crowds, laughter, streetlights, the mundane taken for granted. In quiet moments, survivors mourn the world they used to live in, the one where the internet worked, where children played outside without fear, where a knock at the door didn't cause panic. This is the war no one talks about, not with bullets or blades, but with thoughts. The war inside. And it's a war every survivor fights alone. Some lose, some fade, some break entirely. But a few endure, not because they're unfeeling, but because they learn to carry the weight. Not to ignore the fear or grief, but to walk with it. Step by step, day by day, into whatever comes next. By day 30, the rules of survival are no longer theoretical. They're encoded in scars, in hardened routines, in the hoarse, watchful silence of those who've made it this far. The world is quieter now, but not safer. The immediate chaos is gone, replaced by a steady hum of caution and exhaustion. Those who are still alive have settled into a kind of existence that doesn't resemble life as we once knew it. It's something else, something stripped down to necessity. Morning begins not with alarm clocks, but with a slow, cautious inspection of surroundings. Every sound outside a shelter is suspect. Every visitor is a potential threat or an opportunity. Water collection becomes ritual. Rain is celebrated. Dew is gathered with plastic sheets or scavenged tarps. Insects are crushed and boiled not out of malice but for protein. There is no waste. Nothing is thrown away that could someday serve another purpose. Food is foraged, trapped, or traded. Supermarkets are gutted and even the pet food aisles have long been raided. Survivors learn to spot edible weeds. Dandelion roots are roasted. Cattails become soup. Urban scavengers raid the forgotten shelves of office kitchens and vending machines. Rural survivors trap small game or dig up gardens left behind in haste. Hunting is rare and inefficient unless you're trained, and bullets are too valuable to waste. Every calorie burned must be earned back. Currency is no longer paper or coin. It's antibiotics, it's clean socks, it's tampons and batteries and working lighters. A single can of beans is worth more than gold. A functioning radio, even if it only picks up static, holds the promise of something larger than isolation. People begin to organize, not formally but through necessity. Small trading groups form. Barter becomes the only functioning economy. Some shelters evolve into enclaves, part fort, part commune. Governance is primitive and often harsh. Rules are enforced by whoever holds the most resources or commands the most loyalty. In places where survivors have access to power tools, farming equipment, or stored fuel, small fiefdoms emerge. These aren't governments, but survival coalitions, operating on unspoken rules of protection and contribution. You pull your weight, or you're out. Sometimes out means exile. Sometimes it means worse. Medical care is basic at best. Cuts are treated with boiled water and old gauze. Infections are a major killer. Fevers are feared more than bullets. A broken bone could mean permanent disability. A bad wound is often a death sentence. Those with medical training are elevated immediately, protected and prioritized. A former EMT becomes more valuable than any fighter. A retired nurse becomes the cornerstone of a whole group's ability to survive. Stories begin to surface. Not rumors, but survival tales. Of caravans heading west, of military convoys seen weeks ago, of a working generator powering a single gas station, of a community with solar panels still providing light at night. Most of it is probably false, but hope is a currency too. People hold on to these stories, even if they're lies, even if they know they're lies, because some days hope is the only thing strong enough to drag them through to the next sunrise. By now, survivors no longer think in terms of restoration. The idea of the world coming back has become a fantasy. There are no rescue helicopters, no relief camps, no planes overhead. The assumption is no longer that things will get better. The assumption is that this is what life is now. And within that brutal acceptance lies a kind of clarity. You adapt or you die. You build new systems or you fall apart. Civilization, as it turns out, wasn't a guarantee. It was a fragile agreement, and now it's broken. There's a tendency to view apocalyptic scenarios as fiction, but fragments of these collapses have already happened. They've played out in microcosms, moments where the systems faltered, where the illusion of stability cracked. The contours of real-world disasters offer glimpses of what total collapse might look like, not as imagination, but as history. In 2005, when Hurricane Katrina struck New Orleans, it wasn't just the storm that devastated the city. It was the system failure. Communications broke down. First responders were overwhelmed. Relief supply chains collapsed. People were stranded on rooftops. The Superdome, once a symbol of shelter, became a hellish arena of suffering. For days, survivors waited for food, water, and evacuation. Violence erupted. Law enforcement was stretched to the breaking point. The line between order and anarchy dissolved in the humid air. When the 2011 earthquake and tsunami struck Japan, the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant meltdown demonstrated how fragile advanced systems really are. Redundancies failed. Evacuation zones expanded. Radiation leaks displaced entire communities. Governments scrambled to control the narrative while ordinary people faced the terrifying reality of invisible contamination, long-term environmental damage, and the loss of their homes, possibly forever. Go further back to 1986 to Pripyat, Ukraine. The Chernobyl disaster didn't start with an explosion. It started with a test that went wrong. The resulting meltdown rendered an entire city uninhabitable for centuries. The images are iconic: empty schools, rusted amusement parks, gas masks strewn across classrooms. But what's less known is the panic, the misinformation, the denial by authorities, and the mass displacement of citizens who were told everything was fine, until it wasn't. Then there are man-made crises. The 1977 New York City blackout, where power loss led to looting, arson, and widespread civil unrest in a matter of hours. The 2003 Northeast blackout, larger and more severe, saw a more orderly response, but it revealed how quickly transportation, communication, and food systems falter without electricity. Gas stations stopped pumping. ATMs went dead. Supermarket shelves emptied in less than a day. And in recent memory, the global pandemic proved that even modern nations bristling with technology and infrastructure are not immune to chaos. Supply chains buckled, hospitals overflowed, misinformation spread faster than the virus. Entire cities stood silent. People wore masks, hoarded supplies, and feared their neighbours. The system didn't collapse, but it shuddered hard enough to remind us how close we live to the edge. Governments have war-gamed collapse scenarios for decades. FEMA has contingency plans for everything from nuclear detonation to biowarfare. RAND Corporation studies cyber attacks that could bring down the grid. The Pentagon models conflict scenarios triggered by water scarcity and climate migration. The data is clear. Collapse isn't a question of if, but when, where, and how severe. Survivors of historical disasters often echo the same refrain. It happened faster than we thought. One day, everything was normal. The next, it wasn't. Not because the world exploded, but because trust vanished. The power went out. The trucks stopped running. The phones went silent. And people realized no one was coming to save them. These aren't distant hypotheticals. They're warnings written in blood and concrete, not end-of-the-world predictions, but reminders that civilization is a delicate machine held together by cooperation, fuel, law, and hope. When any one of those fails, the unravelling begins. Slowly at first, then all at once. The most dangerous myth we tell ourselves is that the system will always hold, that there will always be another delivery truck, another power surge, another siren blaring in time. But survival doesn't begin when the collapse hits. It begins now, with the understanding that the world we live in is far more fragile than we like to admit. When the layers are peeled back, politics, economics, digital illusions, what's left is a thin thread of cooperation and shared belief. Civilization runs not just on energy and supply chains, but on trust. The idea that someone, somewhere is in charge, that if things go bad, someone will fix it. But history proves otherwise. When systems fail, they often fail from the top down. Those with the most information are often the first to disappear. When the tide turns, it turns quickly, and then it's up to you. Some people imagine that survival in an apocalypse means brute strength, military skills, or endless prepping. But the reality is more nuanced. Survival is about adaptability, the ability to make decisions under extreme pressure, the willingness to let go of comforts, of routine, of expectations. The ones who survive are often the quiet ones, the flexible ones, the ones who already live with less. In some scenarios, the odds are grim. A full-scale nuclear war, with its cascading fallout, nuclear winter, and total supply chain collapse, offers the lowest survival rate. The window to act is short. The environment turns hostile. Radiation doesn't care about how ready you are. It moves on the wind, settles in the soil, poisons silently. Even with preparation, survival is uncertain. An AI uprising might not come with fire and blood. It could come with silence, a total digital lockout, every device dead, every bank account erased, every camera watching, every drone patrolling. In this scenario, hiding is survival, going analog. Returning to paper, to signals, to whispers. A global pandemic, though terrifying, leaves pockets of civilization intact. Communities can isolate, adapt. The infrastructure doesn't collapse overnight. This is a survivable scenario for many, especially those willing to self-isolate and make hard choices quickly. Climate disasters, rising seas, superstorms, crop failures are slower, but just as lethal. They test endurance more than reflex. Survivors will be those who can move with the tide, both literally and metaphorically, who can build, barter and relocate when needed, who know when to stand and when to walk away. Collapse, in the end, is not one moment. It's a process. It begins quietly, an empty shelf here, a missed delivery there, then it accelerates, then it's unstoppable. Surviving it requires more than gear, it requires mindset, awareness, community if you can find it, and solitude if you can't. There is no perfect plan. No single playbook. But the survivors of tomorrow will be the ones who prepared in the calm before the storm, who learned the skills, studied the patterns, and never stopped asking, what if? Because the apocalypse isn't fire from the sky. It's the lights going out, and no one coming to turn them back on. Thanks for listening. This has been How to Survive the Apocalypse. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like to support the show and unlock bonus content, subscribe to the Forbidden Knowledge Network on Patreon. Subscribe now.